Right now, an information war is being waged over a single data point: the operational status of a $20 billion American asset in the Sea of Oman, the USS Abraham Lincoln. The Iranian narrative is precise. Their missile and drone units engage the carrier from 340 kilometers out, forcing what they term a high-speed flight, a retreat of over 1,000 kilometers. The official US counter-narrative from Central Command is two words: all lies. This clash of realities is not just noise. It is a live replay of a playbook. To understand the game being played today, and to decode the signal from the noise, we must return to the moment that Blueprint was first executed. The moment that Blueprint was first executed was an act of defiance on a scale few thought possible. In response to relentless US sanctions, Iran targeted a Nimitz-class American aircraft carrier. Not with a speedboat, not with a drone, with ballistic missiles launched from 340 kilometers away. Now register the reality of this asset: a floating fortress worth over $20 billion, carrying a crew of 5,000 American personnel. It is the undisputed centerpiece of American power projection. And in the face of this direct challenge, it did not engage. It did not launch its own aircraft. It turned, and it fled the scene at full speed. This wasn't an attack designed for a kill. It was a signal, engineered to shatter an illusion. And it did. The result was a psychological earthquake. It was the moment the entire world, every ally, every enemy, every neutral country watched the global hegemon blink. This is what a real power shift looks like. Not a press conference. It's a $20 billion warship running away from a country the United States has sanctioned for over 40 years. In allied capitals from Tokyo to London, military attachés made quiet, urgent calls. In Beijing and Moscow, strategists took notes. A crack had just appeared in the foundation of America's military dominance. But this action creates a severe logical problem. It violates the primary rule of power. You do not run from a weaker opponent. So why would the pinnacle of American military hardware, a platform designed to fight and win global wars, turn and run? What did the Iranians know that the rest of the world was about to find out? The answer to why the world's most powerful navy retreated is not a matter of doctrine or courage. It is a function of a cost equation where the risk side catastrophically outweighed any potential gain. The American carrier was faced with a threat against which its layered defenses had an unacceptably low confidence of intercept, forcing its commander to solve for the only variable that mattered: asset preservation. The skeleton key to this event is Iran's claimed hypersonic capability. This is not a verified fact, and that is the critical distinction an analyst must make. The correct framework, reflected in assessments by bodies like the Center for Strategic and International Studies, is that platforms like the Fattah series, with claimed speeds of Mach 13 to 15 and terminal maneuverability, present a severe anti-access area denial challenge. In strategic calculations, a credible claim of such a weapon forces a repricing of risk, creating a structural vulnerability that must be treated as real until proven otherwise. Register the physics of this engagement problem. A defense system like Aegis, firing an SM-6 Interceptor, is designed to hit a bullet with another bullet. A hypersonic weapon, however, compresses the detection to impact window to mere seconds. When that inbound threat can also execute unpredictable maneuvers in its terminal phase, it places extreme stress on the system's tracking and fire control solutions. The US Navy itself acknowledges this reality through urgent budget allocations for counter-hypersonic programs. The issue isn't literal impossibility. It's a near zero margin for error, especially against a saturation attack designed to overwhelm the system. For the admiral on that bridge, the risk matrix was stark. This was not a potential battle. It was a gamble with a catastrophically negative expected value. A single successful hit from one of these weapons does not just damage the carrier. It threatens a mission kill or sinking of a multi-billion-dollar sovereign asset, representing the hull, the air wing, and its 5,000 crew. The potential loss constituted a strategic shock on a scale the US has not priced in for decades, rendering retreat the only rational decision. This technological asymmetry fundamentally alters the strategic map within a specific theater. It grants Iran a credible anti-access or area denial bubble that can hold America's primary power projection assets hostage within the Persian Gulf and its approaches. But while the Pentagon was processing this military reality, the true damage was being calculated elsewhere. This military vulnerability was an economic signal, a systemic fragility that had been ignored by the market and was suddenly being priced in with brutal efficiency. And its response was not strategic. It was mathematical. This military vulnerability immediately triggered a cascade of economic consequences, locking the United States in a textbook asymmetric cost trap. This is hegemonic overstretch. Quantified. Run the numbers on the asymmetry. An Iranian ballistic missile, a projectile costing between $1 and $2 million. To counter it, the US must fire an Interceptor. A Patriot missile costs approximately $5 million. A THAAD-E Interceptor, nearly $13 million. It is an attritional war of economics that America cannot win. Stop. Register this asymmetry. A $1 million projectile forcing a $13 million response. This is not a battle, it is an economic bleed-out. But the first responders to this reality were not in the Pentagon. They were the insurers at Lloyd's of London, and their reaction was immediate. This new reality was not lost on the markets, as Iran proved its credible ability to choke the Strait of Hormuz, the artery through which 21% of all global oil flows. A market-forced reckoning began. While US sailors scanned the horizon in the Gulf, algorithms in London were repricing risk in real time. With a few keystrokes, the cost of protecting global trade skyrocketed. Global maritime insurers reacted instantly. Major players like Guard and Scold cancelled all war risk coverage for the Persian Gulf. For those who could still get it, premiums on a single supertanker voyage surged by over 300%, from $200,000 to over $1 million. Daily rates for those supertankers hit a record $423,000, a 94% spike in days. Over 150 tankers were reported stranded, their cargo in limbo as traffic halted. Let the data settle on the true cost. This was the moment the market priced in the fragility of US guaranteed security. The threat alone, without a single ship being sunk, was enough to reprice global stability. But this economic shockwave was merely a tremor. It awakened a far more dangerous actor, one for whom this vulnerability is not a strategic problem, but an existential threat. Because in Tel Aviv, they understood that if America could no longer guarantee security in the Gulf, it could certainly not stop a nuclear program. And that activated a protocol long held in reserve, a doctrine of last resort with a chilling name, the Samson option. And with that, the crisis ceased to be an economic problem. It became an existential one. For America's key ally in the region, Israel, Iran's proven capability was not a strategic inconvenience to be managed. It was a direct threat to its continued existence. Register this reality. The secure phone lines between Tel Aviv and the White House were no longer channels for strategic coordination. They became conduits for existential demands. The conversations, once focused on managing regional stability, now centered on the preemptive elimination of Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure. Direct military strikes. This pressure from a cornered ally introduced the ultimate tail risk into the global system. A doctrine that had, until now, remained a dark theoretical possibility. The Samson option. It is Israel's widely understood, though never officially confirmed, policy of last resort. It is a simple and terrifying piece of game theory. If the survival of the state is irrevocably threatened, Israel will not die alone. It is prepared to unleash its entire nuclear arsenal to take its enemies down with it. Suddenly, the abstract financial models and asymmetric cost traps were dwarfed by a new, more primal calculation. An arsenal estimated by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute at approximately 90 warheads. The regional crisis now had a clear, documented and credible path to Armageddon. But as the generals in their bunkers reviewed these apocalyptic doctrines, and the politicians weighed the unthinkable, another variable remained entirely unpriced. What about the millions of foreign workers, the engineers, the laborers, the domestic staff from places like the Philippines and India, living and working across the Gulf, caught directly in the crossfire of this great game? Who was running the numbers on the cost of their lives? The answer, of course, is that no one was running the numbers on their lives. Because on the grand ledgers of Washington and Tel Aviv, this cost was never meant to be calculated. We are not talking about a rounding error. We are talking about the 35 to 40 million foreign nationals who built and operate the glittering futuristic cities of the Gulf. Think Dubai, think Doha. These are the engineers from India, the construction foremen from Pakistan, the nurses from the Philippines, an entire ecosystem of human capital whose families depend on the over $130 billion they send home annually. An economic artery larger than the GDP of many nations, and suddenly, these people, who saw the Gulf as a gateway to a better life, found themselves on the front line. The cityscapes they helped build were now potential targets. Picture a father, a construction worker, standing on his small balcony in Dubai after a long shift. Before, he might have looked at the skyline with a sense of pride. Now, he's just watching the sky, wondering if the skyscraper he's been working on is on someone's list. This is a new, visceral fear. It is the dread of a 2 a.m. emergency alert on a smartphone, shattering the desert silence and signaling that the unthinkable has happened. These are ordinary people, trapped in an extraordinary catastrophe made entirely by decisions in distant capitals. They have become the people watching the sky. So register this reality, the military checkmate delivered by hypersonic weapons, the economic attrition of the asymmetric cost trap, the apocalyptic leverage of the Samson option, and now the unpriced humanitarian crisis of 40 million people trapped in the kill box. All of these vectors, all of these catastrophic failure modes were now converging on a single point of decision, a single desk in a single room, the Oval Office. And after that missile demonstration forces a US carrier group into a strategic retreat, the endgame arrives on the Resolute desk. There, President Trump finds himself staring at two folders. This is the final decision point. The cover of the first folder reads in stark, block capital letters, Global Humiliation. The second, World War III. He must authorize one. Let's be clinical about the contents. The first option, de-escalation, is a public ratification of defeat. It means admitting the United States military, a multi-trillion-dollar force projection asset, has been decisively outmaneuvered by a regional power. For an administration whose brand is built on strength, the political cost is terminal. Let the data settle on the true cost. Poll numbers cratering months before an election. The irreversible signal of hegemonic fragility sent to Moscow and Beijing. It is a priced-in political catastrophe. The second folder contains the escalation protocols, a full-scale, kinetic war with Iran. Before you consider the troop movements, run the numbers on the immediate economic asymmetry. The Strait of Hormuz is a choke point for nearly a quarter of global oil consumption, some 21 million barrels per day. Its closure would not just trigger a price shock, it would detonate the entire global logistics network and ignite a systemic depression. Bond markets would freeze, the VIX would break its scale, and the president would have to explain to the American people why their life savings are evaporating as their children are deployed into a theater that risks a nuclear exchange should Israel activate its Samson option. Into this bind, as the president weighs the certainty of political ruin against the probability of global annihilation, Iran tables its final public offer. A masterstroke of strategic communication. The proposal is broadcast to the world. A complete US military withdrawal from the entire Middle East. The timeline is 10 days. In exchange, all attacks will cease. Immediately, register this reality. This is not an off-ramp. It is the public arming of the trap. Some will argue for a third path. A calibrated strike. More sanctions. Back-channel talks. But Iran's missile demonstration has already repriced the cost of any strike. It now guarantees symmetrical escalation. Sanctions are a long-term tool rendered useless in a 10-day crisis window. And back-channel diplomacy is nullified when the final terms are already public. To accept the offer is to publicly sign the global humiliation folder, handing Iran a historic victory and confirming that its asymmetric cost trap worked. To refuse is to make the United States the sole actor choosing global war, not to prevent a loss of prestige, but to avoid ratifying a loss that has already occurred. The choice itself becomes the checkmate. There is no move left on the board that does not result in a catastrophic loss. So I put the question to you. If faced with this choice, a priced-in collapse of national credibility or an unpriced tail risk of global systemic collapse, what move is left? Is there a third variable the strategists in Washington have failed to model? Share your analysis in the comments. The third option strategists search for is not a hidden tactical maneuver. It is a historical diagnosis. To understand this final act, you must zoom out from the single crisis to the sweep of history. What we are witnessing is not an anomaly. It is a recurring pattern priced into the life cycle of every great power. Empires rarely fall in a single decisive battle. They are bled out. They collapse when the economic cost of projecting global power becomes fundamentally unsustainable for the domestic economy that supports it. This was the story of the British Empire after 2 world wars, and it was the final chapter for the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. The United States has now reached its point of hegemonic overstretch. Visualize the imperial balance sheet. On the asset side, the formidable hardware of power, carrier strike groups, stealth jets, a global network of bases. On the liability side, the trillions in debt from post-9/11 wars. Now let the data settle on the true cost of the present. According to the Costs of War project at Brown University, direct US military costs in the wider Middle East for this period alone, carry an estimate between $9.6 and $12 billion. Register this reality. Iran never needed to defeat America's military. It only needed to make the cost of America's presence prohibitively high using an asymmetric arsenal that was good enough, precise enough, and cheap enough to force a market reckoning. The missile demonstration was not a military act. It was an economic one. It was an invoice for empire delivered at hypersonic speed. A US withdrawal from the region is therefore no longer a question of if, but when, and at what final cost to American prestige. The retreat of a carrier, the panic in the markets, the impossible choice in the Oval Office, all of it was merely a prelude. It was the test fire, the demonstration that exposed a fatal fragility in the architecture of American power, proving the system was more brittle than anyone was willing to admit. The warning shot was the easy part. The signals of this global repricing are everywhere if you know how to read them. To continue tracking the real fractures in the global order, subscribe for more analysis.